Hi, and welcome to this, my third in the series of lunchtime snippets about posture. Yesterday we talked about my story and how the incidents in my childhood had influenced me throughout life and influenced my posture. It's only because of an awareness of posture and me being prepared to do things about that, and I think a general awareness in the things that I do, that have enabled me to manage it. Now, obviously, take somebody that has had problems in early life and those issues have never been resolved, and they're going to take those issues plus the adaptations to those issues through into their adult life, and leading potentially greater strain on joints, particularly the weight-bearing joints. So let's take, for example, a child playing in the playground, maybe fall off a swing or down the slide, and perhaps end up spraining an ankle, or worse still, fracturing a leg bone. That child's not going to be walking correctly. It's going to maybe have its foot in plaster. The weight of that plaster on a young child, obviously having to walk and adapting their gait using crutches to take the weight off the leg while the bone is healing. A bone will heal in about 3 weeks under normal circumstances. But during that course of the time, the child is going to adopt a particular way in which it manages itself to be able to move about, and perhaps develop a leg swing. Now, although after the bone has healed, it may well be that that adapted gait then causes other problems higher up, maybe in the pelvis or in the hip. And whilst the plaster is taken off, the bone is healed, the plaster is taken off, then they may well be left with that adaptive gait because of the behavioural pattern that they've got into, or that way in which they've had to manage through that period of time. So, and these things can lead to later on in life if left unresolved. Now, if you think about it, it's muscles that move joints, and if the joint's out of alignment, let me just recap there. If you think about it, if a bone is when it's broken, will reach a point where it's actually going to break. But before that, then the tissues will take up the slack. The tissues in the joint, the movement between the bones will actually go as far as they can until they reach resistance, and that's when we get a break. Now, if you think about it, it's muscles that move joints, and if the joint's out of alignment, then the muscle's going to be affected. If the muscle's under tension, it's going to affect the joint. A lot of people come to me and they've say they've had problems, and they've gone and had massage, or they've gone to the gym and to doing some exercises to strengthen the muscles. But in actual fact, if that joint is left left in a restricted manner, or in fact with a sprained ankle, for example, it's not just necessarily one bone that's affected, but the different joints, particularly in the midfoot. And if they're left uncorrected, then the way in which we place our foot on the floor, and therefore our sense of stability as we engage with the ground, is going to be affected. And you'll see that some people can be more stable on one foot than the other. And so that being the case, then people will develop a preferred way of doing things, standing on one leg more than the other. And I'll give you an example of that. Many years ago, I had a young girl brought to me, and in actual fact diagnosed as having growing pains. And when I asked her to stand on one leg, it was near impossible for her to do it, as was the other one. And in fact, her mother just smiled and said, no, she's never been able to do that. She's always had very bad posture. So having looked at her and gave some mobility in the foot, and corrected alignment problems in the pelvis, once we got her standing again and asked her to stand on one leg, she just stood there straight as a die, and her mother's jaw just dropped. And that girl had been ostracized because of that physical limitation in being able to do something. And they put it down just to the fact that it was poor balance So things can just drag on and just become more complicated. But I see the pelvis as being like the foundation of the building. And in this particular girl's case, that was so. And but it's as I say, the pelvis is the foundation of the building, and if that's not level, the rest of the building can't be level. Now the spine is very good at the body's very good at adapting to the pelvis perhaps being out of alignment, and it does that by virtue of the postural muscles, the intrinsic muscles of the spine, compensating and holding the spine up straight, and or should I say upright. Now that might lead to being muscles on one side of the body being out of balance, and then higher up being able to compensating for that, and that can go all the way up into the head neck. I'll be talking later in this series about postural development of children and how the influence of the position of the head on the neck can influence posture as well. But for this example, let's just look at the pelvis being out of alignment, and that might be from a fall on the ice, a fall off a sofa or something like that, and that can throw the pelvis out, or indeed walking awkwardly as a result of having a foot in plaster. This can lead, if left uncorrected, this can lead to people developing a longer term postural imbalance or postural behaviour, putting more weight on one leg, putting more weight through hips or knees, and then of course if the hips involved, it might also mean some degree of internal rotation or external rotation, which is going to influence the joint capsule, and then of course the bony aspect of the knee, and leading to bone on bone ultimately, and the result of that being of course an arthritic hip or an arthritic knee, simply because the joint isn't working in its optimum alignment. So all of this leading to other issues, not just with the physical, the musculoskeletal body, the physiology, but also affecting the physiology of breathing. For example, it can affect the tension in the diaphragm, postural imbalances through the diaphragm, upper thoracics, and through into the neck, shoulders, tension in the neck, shoulders, and leading to also alignment issues with the head and the neck, and the body's again compensating for that. I'll be talking a little bit more about head neck alignment when we look at some of the things that people do in the office, and that might be one of the reasons why people can develop head neck problems. That's simply because of, for example, using a telephone under one ear and causing the head to be locked into side bending. This in itself can cause compression at the base of the skull, and potentially leading to headaches, suboccipital headaches. So that's the end of today's snippets. Tomorrow I'm hoping to look into the psychology of posture and how we are defined by our posture and how posture defines us. So I look forward to tomorrow, and hopefully you find this of interest, and you'll join me tomorrow, and have a good day.